Now, the Humanize functions are designed to make the playback of a MIDI performance or MIDI groove more realistic with regard to which samples are fired and when they are fired. The random function basically takes the sequential sample pool for a given velocity and randomizes the hits. So what that means is as incoming MIDI for a particular instrument is recognized by Superior Drummer, it's going to fit into a specific sample pool, and there will be other related samples that Superior Drummer could choose to use to trigger that sound at that velocity. So within that sample pool, rather than just choosing them in a linear fashion or picking the same sample over and over, it's going to choose to randomize the samples within the sample pool and randomize which samples are actually fired. The alternate function will alternate right-hand samples and left-hand samples if the library was recorded that way. So if the library was recorded with right-hand samples and left-hand samples, with this function enabled, it will always alternate between those samples. So if you're doing a roll, or even if you're doing a double stroke roll or even a single stroke roll, it's still going to pull from those alternating samples just to add a bit more randomness to the performance. The semi-sequence function basically works this way. If a sample pool for a given velocity is low, meaning there's not a lot of samples available, and that could be just because of the particular library you're using, the instrument you're using, or it could be because of some of the voice and layer settings that are configured. We'll talk about that in a moment. But if that is the case and there's a low sample pool for Superior Drummer to pull from for a particular velocity, then what it will do is it will pull from adjacent velocity sample pools above or below the original incoming velocity and then adjust the volume accordingly. So that way, even in low sample pool situations, Superior Drummer can still intelligently pull from other sample pools near that velocity range, adjust the volume as needed in order to have plenty of samples to work with to create a realistic performance. The velocity to volume function basically pays attention to the incoming velocity and the relative volume of the sample. And it pays attention to the relationship between the actual hit, the incoming MIDI velocity, and the volume of the sample being fired. So this has to do with various libraries will have different levels of loud and soft samples, and even the specific samples within the sample pool for a particular velocity may change in volume as well. And this function, the velocity to volume function, will work to smooth out or even out those changes in volume. And so this function will work to make sure the incoming MIDI velocity from the performance correctly matches the actual volume of the samples that are fired. So this basically works to preserve the integrity of the performance. And the soft velocity setting here works more with legacy tune track products such as the custom and vintage library, where maybe there weren't a lot of soft samples recorded. So this is basically a threshold that tells Superior Drummer when to engage this velocity to volume setting. Now, once again, that's just a very brief overview of the function of all of these settings. However, in most situations, you're going to want to leave these settings enabled. The only time I can see that you'd want to disable these settings is if you want Superior Drummer to fire the same sample over and over. And then in order to do that, you're going to need to make some adjustments to this voice and layer section as well, which we will discuss. And that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.